Good afternoon and
Come
welcome
up a bit closer.
to today's press conference. I'm Stephanie Levitz. I'll be moderating today. I'm a reporter with the Toronto Star. We have with us an event to mark Genocide Remembrance, Condemnation and Prevention Month, and over to you.
Thank you so much. Good day, everyone. My name is Ali Ehsassi. I'm the Member of Parliament for Willowdale, and it is indeed a distinct honor for me to introduce a number of guests that we have with us here in Ottawa today. I'd like to thank, in particular, Joanne Hodges of the Alliance of Genocide Victim Communities, as well as Kyle Matthews of the Montreal Institute for Genocide Studies for making today's event possible. I'd like to begin by saying a few words in support of today's event. We are truly delighted to have here with us today leaders from the following communities in Canada. We have members of the Rwandan community, Uyghurs, Tigrayans, Tamils, Hazara, and a member from the Tibetan community as well. As is well known by everyone, our country has long been a haven for those who are seeking to escape violence and persecution around the world and are eager to build new lives here in Canada. Canada has historically led the way to taking action to recognize genocide, mass atrocities, and ongoing crimes against humanity. And we've also been a country that has always recognized full well the need to hold countries to account for any type of mass atrocities. So here to answer any questions you may have about the ongoing atrocities and the impunity of various states are, apart from Joanne Hodges and Kyle Matthews, I truly am blessed to have here with us beacons of hope, such as Dr. Tahir Shaaran from the Canadian Hazara Advocacy Group, Mr. Kayum Masimov from the Uyghur Rights Advocacy Project, as well as Makeda, Leul, the Security and Justice for Tigrayans Canada. So I will pass it off to my good friend Kyle Matthews. After that, others will make 1 minute brief statements, and then we are open to any questions we do receive from the media. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. April is a month for the prevention and punishment of the crime of genocide. It's a month where we mark genocides that have occurred across the world and are occurring as we speak. Canada has a special role as a country that is a signatory of the Genocide Convention, that helped found the International Criminal Court, and also brought about the responsibility to protect principles. All of these mechanisms and norms are meant to make the international community work faster and more efficiently to protect civilians from mass atrocity crimes, including genocide. It's very important here, we're at the heart of the Canadian democracy, that Canadian citizens can come here and speak about their concerns, what's happening to their loved ones in other countries, but also call for policy changes and actions by the Government of Canada. So we're very lucky today to have this space at the heart of the Canadian democracy, to have these members of their communities speak about what they would like to see done, how would they like to see Canadian foreign policy be strengthened in order to protect civilians and uphold the Genocide Convention. Last but not least, this is also a domestic issue. Canada is connected to pretty much every country in the world through our new citizens and immigration. So we must look at mass atrocities as a strategic issue that can impact social cohesion. And we also have to look at the fact that some of the voices speaking up against genocide, speaking up for human rights of their community members in their homelands, also sometimes face transnational repression here in Canada. So we must also double down and strengthen and protect our fellow citizens who are facing intimidation and threats from foreign countries that are committing genocide. So with that, I would like to pass the floor to Joanne Hodges.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, my name's Joanne Hodges. I'm from the Alliance of Genocide Victim Communities. We have 6 membership communities. We couldn't fit everyone on the stage today, so I just want to make this statement on behalf of the Rwandan, Uyghur, Hazara, Tigrayan, Tibetan, and Tamil community representatives who are a part of this alliance. And immediately after this press conference down the hall, we're having an event marking Genocide Prevention, Condemnation and Prevention Month. So you're all welcome to join us there too. First, we're proud that this alliance of genocide victim communities has come together in Canada. Only in a country as richly and beautifully diverse as Canada, with arms open to so many refugees, would you find such prominent members of all these genocide victim communities living together. We're also proud of Canada and the Canadian government's proactive approach to recognizing genocide, including those of the Tamil and the Uyghur communities, in addition, of course, to the genocide 30 years ago against the Tutsi, which are all members of our alliance. Even in Canada, we've recognized our own residential school system as genocide. That's significant. However, we still know we can do much more. We have urgent situations around the world that need to be addressed today. In our alliance, 2 of our membership communities have not yet been officially recognized as genocide, this despite facing, because of their ethnicity, massacres, extrajudicial killings, mass forced displacement, indefinite detention, torture, sexual and gender-based violence, starvation crimes, the closure of businesses, the seizing of assets, restriction of international aid, the targeted destructions of items that support life, starvation crimes, dehumanization, targeted destruction of cultural heritage items, and the application of gender apartheid policies. The list goes on, and these situations demand immediate attention. Therefore, we urgently call the Canadian government to acknowledge the ongoing genocide against the Hazara people and the Tigrayan people, urging swift, decisive action to hold the perpetrators accountable for their heinous crimes. The Tibetan and Uyghur communities are facing round-the-clock electronic surveillance, AI face recognition, tracking their every movement. Their DNA samples are collected. The Uyghur people are experiencing forced labor, forced organ harvesting. And while the media and the public attention with it often focus on 1 or 2 cases around the world at a time, crises around the world at a time, we know that if we ignore or overlook grave atrocities that take place anywhere, we embolden the perpetrators. Perpetrating states know how to use our lack of attention in their favor, and they use moments we're distracted to commit atrocity crimes. And this is why it's imperative that we intentionally not just keep our eyes open, but monitor situations and consistently mobilize to respond when atrocity crimes are occurring. To that end, the Alliance of Genocide Victims is working towards initiating a global interparliamentary alliance with our partners, including James Joseph and the Duty Legacy out of the UK. If we were principled and consistent in our response to atrocity crimes, we would neutralize that strategy and provide a deterrent. One of Canada's tools to combat atrocity crimes is sanctions. In our alliance, we have 6 communities, 4 of which have had no sanctions placed against any perpetrator at all, despite ample evidence of crimes. So this is an obvious first step that we can take: apply sanctions consistently on foreign nationals who commit gross human rights violations. We also have a War Crimes Act. The Crimes Against Humanity and War Crimes Act enables prosecutions of genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes in Canadian criminal courts. Today, the War Crimes Act is used primarily as an immigration tool and utilized for citizenship revocation and deportation. And still, we hear of survivors who have to live next to and with known perpetrators here in our communities in Canada. The other night, I learned that the Rwandan community tracks 214 perpetrators in Canada. And that genocide was 30 years ago. So how long does it take for us to make meaningful action? We have emboldened people downtown Toronto openly waving the flag of the Taliban, intimidating Hazara Canadians. So we believe there's an urgent need to reorient the application of the Crimes Against Humanity and War Crimes Act towards its original intent, to hold accountable those who've committed heinous acts, ensuring justice is served for the victims and survivors. Justice is an essential part of lasting peace. And just lastly, we'd like to remind the government of the humanitarian principle to care for the most vulnerable first. We believe that the refugees who are victims of genocide can be categorized as being amongst the most vulnerable people in the world. We welcome the compassionate response of our government to regionally specific crises around the world, and commend the Parliament for unanimously passing the non-binding proposal to resettle 10,000 Uyghurs here. But that proposal really should be followed up with action, and we'd like to see those Uyghur people here. Genocide survivors are particularly vulnerable because they, as a group, are the targets of strong collectives of power. We know that for any genocide to actually be attempted, it takes a significant level of coordination, mobilization, and strategy. Most often, it is initiated by a state because of a genocide's complexity. In varying ways, these states or collectives of power then pursue their targets, and these survivors, wherever they go, whether it's a neighboring state or the other side of the planet, are pursued. We have states leveraging themselves diplomatically to have survivors of genocide deported back to their territories. We have states that refuse basic consular services to survivors. State actors are intimidating and silencing survivor communities. The Alliance of Genocide Victim Communities is participating in the foreign interference inquiry, and we've heard a bit about this in the first round and expect there will be more of that in the second round coming later this year. And disinformation, misinformation, dehumanization all continue to impact the overall well-being of refugees and their ability to thrive in the communities they land in. We have refugee camps that are intentionally set on fire. So these unique vulnerabilities linger in varying ways. We'd like to see Canada prioritize the resettlement of all genocide victim communities, including the Tamil, Uyghur, Tibetan, Tigrayan, Hazara, and Tutsi survivors. We're asking our government to consider that today. The Alliance of Genocide Victim Communities believes that the consistent imposition of targeted sanctions, the review of our laws to ensure they are effective, and the resettlement of genocide victims to Canada are not just policy initiatives, but they can help embody our commitment to the values of justice, human rights, and compassion. Let us show the world that in Canada, justice and protection of human dignity are not just noble aspirations, but the very essence of our national character. Thank you. I think we're going to have just a couple of very brief statements. Is it Kayum speaking first? Yeah, Kayum. Kayum Masimov from the Uyghur.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Kayum Masimov, je représente les communautés ouïghours de Canada, projet de défense des droits des Uyghurs. I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm honored to share this stage with my friends, I would say. Canada was the first, Canadian Parliament was the first legislative body in the world to acknowledge the genocidal policies of Chinese Communist Party towards Uyghurs as genocide. Again, Canada initiated resettlement of 10,000 Uyghurs from vulnerable third-party states, and I'm very, very pleased and I'm very proud of that. Yet there is so much we can do and should do. For instance, we talk about transnational repression, and Uyghur community in Canada is the first victim of the transnational repression. And nowhere it is more evident than at the public hearings we're having right now on foreign interference in Canada. So I hope it will lead to some concrete recommendations and the government will follow up on that. Another topic of preoccupation for our community is the existence of slave-tainted labor products in our supply chains. Anywhere you can go in big shop centers in Canada, you can observe the existence of Uyghur slave labor-tainted imports, and this is a high time to address it. None of the shipment coming from Uyghur region was seized so far, and despite the pledge of the government in 1923 budget, it is still not addressed. So these topics of a big preoccupation for our community, diaspora. And thank you once again for having me. And with this, I would like to pass the word to the representative of Tigrayan community, Madam Makeda.
Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure and an honor to be sharing the stage, as Kayum mentioned, with the friends that I've made here with this alliance. My name is Makeda Leul. I'm the chairperson from Security and Justice for Tigrayans Canada. Over the between November 2020 until November 2022, genocide had engulfed the Tigray region by the co-conspirators of the Ethiopian government, the Eritrean government, and the Fano militia. In those 2 years, approximately 600,000 people have died in only 2 years, and these numbers and this crisis does not get talked about enough. 70,000 Tigrayans had to flee into Sudan, where they are now stuck in Sudan and are compounded by their vulnerabilities along with the escalating Sudanese conflict. And over 120,000 women and girls have been subjected to extreme gender-based violence, and no justice has been given to these people. So I'm here today standing alongside the Alliance here with me to be a voice for these people, to be a voice for not only Tigrayans but genocide victims around the world. And hoping that Canada can be a beacon of hope for these people. Thank you. And I will pass it to my Alliance member, Tahir, from the Hazara community. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be in here and raise one of the fundamental or one problem of humankind, is genocide. In particular, today I'm talking the Hazara community, who has been suffering over the last 130 years and probably having the longest ongoing genocide in history, which we know. Unfortunately, there have been massacres many times by hand of the Taliban and other extremist groups, and since the Taliban took power in 2021, they are still facing target killing, forced displacements. Since the Taliban took over the power, we have more than 21, kind of attacks on this community in mosque, in public buses, and many education center and hospitals. And then they are facing mass displacements, extra taxation, and their women also facing extra, kind of oppression and arrest and torture because of their ethnicity, apart from the gender apartheid policy that the Taliban implementing on the all women of the Afghanistan. We really demanding from our government in Canada to really recognize the ongoing genocide against the Hazara community and take the serious, measure on that, and then makes that the Taliban and all other terrorist groups who are, behind of all this, atrocity to be accountable. I'm actually very great to be here with this alliance to actually raise the issue of genocide, and we're hoping that working together we probably can make this world a better place. And I'm also proud that in Canada has been very open to the to the human rights, and they've been the front line of the advocacy for human rights globally. And so far they have actually recognized many genocides that occurred in this planet, and we are hoping that by recognizing the genocide of the Hazaras and other ongoing genocide, we can actually open another chapter on our fight for human rights in this country. Thank you very much for your attention. If anyone has any question, we are more than welcome to address it.
I'll use my moderator's privilege over here to ask a few, if I might. I wanted to pick up on the issue a couple of you have raised about transnational repression and foreign interference. And to the extent to which you were following the inquiry as it unfolded, What there that you heard was new to you about how the government deals with this, but also what concrete recommendations you think could be put in place to deal with the specific issue of transnational repression as it relates to people being coerced or bullied to vote in a certain direction in our democracy.
My colleagues and I are working on a report on transnational repression in Canada, so we're going to have recommendations and a thorough analysis of what's happening across the country and what can be done about it. But one thing I would say is that if we do have evidence of diplomatic staff, of non-Canadian diplomatic staff in Canada, putting pressure on Canadian citizens, whatever they're doing, there needs to be a strong message and send some of those diplomats home and make them persona non grata. I think one has to show a strong measure and say this is simply not acceptable. So I'm hoping that we might see more public displays of denouncing transnational repression and actually holding those diplomats to account for doing so. Thank you.
The foreign interference inquiry was a timely thing, and we as a diaspora are very pleased to take part and testifying before it. Without going into details, I just would like to highlight that the foreign interference in Canada, this is not something new. I remember in 2007, I was interviewed by Maclean Journal, and the Maclean came out with an editorial entitled "Big Brother Beijing is Watching," and that happened in 2007. So 17 years on and still ongoing. We as a community, we've been puzzled why there is no action. We have recommendations. It's very lengthy, but probably listening to us as a community and what we have to say. I use this word that comparison that we are like canary in the coal mine. Maybe this is not exactly the good aphorism, but still, really, actually, this is what happened to us. This is across communities facing Tibetans, Uyghur people, Falun Dafa followers, Hong Kongers, Taiwanese. This is specifically towards China. But yes, we do need a public inquiry, and we need this more public debate on that. And the Canadian public is they should be informed and take decision on informed basis. Yeah, thank you.
Just on my follow-up, Joanne, I guess to pick up on something you said, and you talked about how the War Measures Act is, the War Measures Act, the War Crimes Act is used sort of as an immigration tool. And I want, you reflected on sort of the space in between the genocide in Rwanda being 30 years ago and the perpetrators of that walking amongst Canadians. And I wonder, what would you say to the government about the need to sort of speed up that process in an era where the world has sped up? These conflicts are playing out online in real time. We have ongoing, you can look on social media and see it in a way that we didn't see the Rwandan genocide. And if our tools aren't equipped for that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we're definitely not currently equipped. I think we have the framework in place, but the problem right now with the War Crimes Act, the unit isn't funded. So the unit can't investigate when it doesn't have the staff to do so, essentially. And there is, with the 214 that the Rwandan community was talking about, they mentioned that they have provided all of that information to the RCMP. The RCMP did go to Rwanda, but then there's no follow-up with the community about what's happening. And so I think that the sense of justice is really lost, and the sense of that somebody cares or is following up with the victims themselves in order to provide that sense of justice, which is so important, is really lost. And so it is urgent that we reform, we review what the effectivity of the act, but and fund the unit adequately. But I think there is urgency because of the large impact the lack of justice has on the genocide victim communities. There's a real many lingering effects because of impunity or perceived impunity.
I believe that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much to everybody for sharing your stories and for being here, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.